Welcome to Modern Musings, conversations with the maiden, mother, and crone, looking at ourselves and the world through the lens of the 21st century. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Amber Jones, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Kristen Murray and Cindy Murray.
Hello.
Well, today we have a kind of fun topic, I suppose. If you're just now joining in to us, we are three women who like to talk about everything.
Everything.
Absolutely everything. So today we're talking about tattoos.
Everybody has an opinion.
Yeah, everybody has an opinion. So
Everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody.
everybody.
Nice pun, yeah.
So, picture this, listeners. You're out and about, and you see a guy who is who's walking up, and he has tattoos all up and down his arms, tattoos everywhere you can see. What do you think when you first see this guy? Cindy?
Oh, that one's hard for me because I have in the past, I was as a different generation than you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised to think that only certain people got tattoos.
Yeah.
Primarily, they were people in the military got tattoos, usually while they were serving in armed combat. I knew a lot of Vietnam vets and Korean War vets and Desert Storm people who had tattoos. And then there was I don't want to use, I want to be really careful how I say it because my opinion of it has changed. But in the past, I thought of them as maybe the stoners, the party people, just a certain
Wild and free.
yeah. That's probably, just, and it's kind of because of you couldn't have a tattoo if you wanted to work, you had to cover it up. Nobody wanted to see it. And I worked in human resources for many, many, many years. So, if you saw a tattoo on a potential hiree, you would tell them, okay, you're either going to have to cover that up or something, or you just wouldn't hire them if it, And nowadays you see people with tattoos on their forehead, so I'm not saying that's a good choice, but it is a choice. And it really limited those people, the people who had, like a full sleeve of tattoos or whatever. It limited their ability to get certain kinds of work.
Yeah.
And therefore it put them in a certain social class. And that is changing. I'm seeing that changing. It started changing when people my age started getting it. It really started with your age group of people embracing the idea of body, and I'm calling it body art because that's what it is.
Well, it truly is because those that do tattoos are artists.
They're artists, and
unless you're in prison,
and it's an expression of your certain, your beliefs or your ideals or what you think is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started noticing that, it wasn't just your generation. It wasn't just, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. It's starting to become boomers. There are boomers
going back and getting tattoos.
Yeah. And a lot of my friends, most of my friends, I will actually say, have tattoos.
Laura has gotten her tattoos later in life.
Yes. And so, I have friends who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who have multiple tattoos. And I admire their tattoos. I admire their nerve in getting them because it makes me very nervous to even think about it. I will stand up right now and say I do not have a tattoo. I've never had a tattoo. And the only piercings that I have are my ears, and I have one extra piercing on my left ear. So, which was in style in the 80s. You could hang a dangly or another stud, from that extra piercing. So that's it. That's all I have. And, I even get nervous about putting that extra piercing in sometimes. So it's kind of weird. I quit wearing it when I worked in an office because it wasn't appropriate for office wear. And I mean, now nobody would look at it sideways. So,
Yeah.
and I've never gotten a tattoo for a couple of reasons. My husband was not fond of tattoos. He didn't necessarily disapprove of tattoos. He disapproved of the way that some people used tattoos or how they placed them or whatever. And of the expense of getting tattoos, because they are not a cheap form of body modification. And he also would often say he never had anything that was important enough to him to have it permanently drawn on his body. And I kind of feel the same way. I'm not against them, but I've never really had something that an image that I loved or an ideal that was so important to me that I wanted it drawn out on my body for the rest of my life. So,
Me neither, but I have 8 tattoos.
Right. But for me to put something on me like that, it needs to make a statement. It needs to be an expression of who I am. And I'm not saying that's not out there. I just haven't seen it yet. And I have thought multiple times now that my husband has passed, actually, I've thought about going and getting a tattoo, but I don't have anything that just strikes me as saying this is who I am, or this is what I believe, or something like that. And I could go out there and get a cross put on, or the word peace, or the word now, or some one of my one little words. But
no, don't do that.
I just don't think,
now.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Right. But you see what I'm saying, that there's not really anything that I think just strikes me that I need to put on there right now. So
Yeah. Now.
I know. There is only now.
I understand. Definitely things have changed. Like a workplace you're talking about. In my 10 years of teaching, things have changed dramatically from the first school that I worked at, where I had, because I have tattoos on my chest that you can see if you wear like a fancy casual or, suit or whatever, that I had to get an extra bra or an extra covering to cover my chest tattoos.
Right.
And, I had to wear 3/4 length sleeves to cover my arm tattoos, and pants, no see-through hose to cover my leg tattoos. And then this, of course, started whenever I was working at Dillard's and we had to dress professionally, and I had to completely cover my tattoos.
Yeah. A lot of employers still require that.
Yeah.
They do.
And now I don't. And I've noticed going to other schools and interacting with schools that schools are now letting teachers, not do that extra cover up, not like, like me with my chest hanging out, showing my tattoos or whatever. That would be inappropriate. But, just like having an arm sleeve,
right,
and not having to wear those
Right.
long sleeves, schools are allowing teachers to do that. And schools are allowing teachers to have those extra piercings.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't go against them. Versus when I first started teaching, I had to take out my nose rings and I had to take out my extra piercings. I could only wear just like one stud in each one of my ears.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to wear those extra layers of clothing to cover up tattoos. Right. And pretty much everyone did. And there was, I guess, the misconception that, like, if you're tattooed, you're not a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Such as, like, the stereotypes when you were talking about tattoos and, like, what you thought about them back in the day. That goes to, like, that goes towards one of these 5 tattoo stereotypes that I kind of wanted to address. So, and that's number 1. Tattoos are for criminals and delinquents.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah.
Other than... and really the only people, back in the day that I knew that had tattoos were criminals and delinquents or
military
people that were in the military. And even the people in the military,
the ruffians in the military.
Well, no, but they had to keep it. If you got a tattoo in the military, you had to keep it covered. It cannot show outside of your uniform because it goes against uniform policy. So they were usually on their back or, their upper arm or somewhere where their clothing covered them.
My grandpa had one on his arm. He was in the Navy, and of course he had an anchor.
Yeah, they were very,
just like Popeye.
Yeah, they were very traditional type tattoos. They were either a cute
Americana style.
Yes, the flag or an eagle, an owl. I knew somebody that had a big owl.
Now there are so many styles of tattoos. It's crazy.
But they were very pinup girls. They'd put their girlfriend's name or their mother's name or a heart. For whoever they left behind.
Heart with mom. Isn't that another Popeye one?
Maybe.
I don't know. Popeye, but that's definitely got the biker vibe.
So, Kristen, what about you? Have you run across any tattoo stereotypes, or how do you feel about the subject?
So I remember gangs being really prominent whenever I was growing up.
Gang tattoos. Yeah.
So for me, like, you were either like, kind of like a free living kind of rock and roll-y musician kind of person, right? Like, you live hard and fast.
Yeah.
Or you're a gangster who probably also lives hard and fast.
Right.
And so to me, like, not to use like a bad word, but I saw those people as like bad. Bad, cool bad and bad. Right, but also like tough, right? So that's, same like the military people. I think like people with like really thick skin are really tough. So to me, like, I kind of looked up to like the rock and roll scene with the tattoos, and that's kind of like where I'm like, I kind of want to be like that.
Right.
So I like that look with the tattoos.
The tattoos and
maybe
the
that's
rocker
because I'm like a really soft person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And so
you want something that makes you look
a little tougher than what I really am.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I know you probably have other stereotypes there. Do you want to share those other stereotypes with us?
Yeah. So the number one, and I'm just, on this website called Certified Tattoo, and we'll link that on Heard It on the podcast. And they're talking about the 5 most common misconceptions and stereotypes about people with tattoos. And number 1 is that they're criminals or delinquents.
Right.
And it's so funny, like you were talking about like the rocker kids at school with the tattoos. I'll go back to stereotypes in just a second. While you were doing that, I was thinking, well, gosh, the kids that went and got tattoos at my school were like country boys, and they got barbed
I was
wire
thinking of
around
like
their
real,
bicep.
actual, like real rock and roll people.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like Kiss had tattoos. Some of the guys in
Yeah.
Kiss had tattoos or whatever.
Like
yeah.
real actual rock and roll people, not teenagers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The barbed wire is a very popular one though.
From the 90s. That was so
Well,
90s.
and that was
Yeah.
well, and I think that one started with like office people who wanted to be less, like maybe the guy wore a 3-piece suit at work, but he drove a Harley on the weekend.
Yeah.
And he
it's
wanted
edgy.
and
It's edgy, yeah.
Yeah, he wanted to be a little more edgy, and so he'd get the little barbed wire tattoo around his bicep or around his wrist so that it was covered up by
Cool
his
dads.
really expensive watch, So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so back to the
So number 2 is tattoos are for uneducated people.
Wow.
that too. See, a lot of times you see that falling that same conception of the miscreants having you usually, personify them as having, less education.
And the educated people dress up and look nice because they work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's just a normal stereotype.
It is
And it's so funny because tattoos are kind of expensive, so you kind of have to work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there
Make
are a
money
lot
to
of
get
people
But
who
people
spend.
who don't like tattoos feel that it's a waste of money.
It's a waste of money. And there are a lot of people who don't have the money to be spending on it, who do spend that money on it. So
I mean,
I for one.
Well,
Both
yeah,
of
me
my
too.
tattoos, I probably should not have spent the money on it. So I will be the first to admit
yeah,
that.
I mean, there's
Hey, no regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. I want that as a tattoo, actually.
Speaking of uneducated people, what movie was that? Was it it had Ed Helms, didn't it? And they were it was We're the Millers, where the kid shows up and he has this tattoo across his chest, and he's a really dumb guy, and he works in a carnival, and it's supposed to say no regrets, but it says no regrets. And so that's the joke, and tattoos are for uneducated people personified right there.
right.
Because and there's like websites and
Bad
memes
tattoos.
and, bad tattoos and stuff like that.
Tattoos gone bad.
And I feel like my first tattoo, it's not really a bad tattoo, but it was like, and to preface this, Kristen and I went together to get our first tattoos. And actually, every time Kristen has gotten a tattoo, I've been with her.
Yeah.
But
We were uneducated
yeah, we were uneducated
because
and
we didn't research.
yeah, we didn't research bad tattoo places, and we went to a beer barn in Denton to get a
It
tattoo.
wasn't the beer barn. It was by the beer barn.
It was by the beer barn. We went to a tattoo place attached to a beer barn. Kind of off I-35, which is
I think
probably
I know
still
which place
there.
you're
It's
talking
over by
about.
Bonnie Bray.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we went there because I don't know why we decided to pick that place, because I'm sure Denton
because
had
they were
more.
still open and it
Yeah.
was an impulse.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was an impulse, but we both had like an idea of what we wanted, and we had been carrying it around. But like the tattoo I picked, and I probably wouldn't, like if I was to go back and re-pick a tattoo, it wouldn't have been that tattoo. But I mean, it kind of represented what I liked and who I was, a sun and a moon, which is like the bulk of my tattoos, really. Although I've started getting kitties on my arm. But, yeah, it was like a tattoo that I had gotten from like one of those 25-cent, from one of
like
the,
a water slide.
yeah,
tattoo?
like from it was
temporary.
You just called it a water slide.
yeah,
tattoo?
a temporary.
Yeah, because you put
Never heard
water
of
on
that.
it and the paper slides off.
Oh, I'm like
wow,
water
okay.
slide.
Yeah, it was a temporary tattoo that I had found
No way.
somewhere.
No way.
And that image that what I took with me was that temporary tattoo. I was like, oh my God,
I never knew
this
that.
is so cool.
That is so 18 years old.
I know.
We were
like-
21 though, but had the maturity of 18-year-olds.
well, I think I found it when I was like 18. I think
And you
we were
carried
at
it
South.
around and you wanted
Yes.
it forever. Yeah.
Well, it was something that you said to me when we first were like friends and we were talking about getting tattoos. You were like, I had always thought that for your first tattoo, it should be something that you carry around with you and look at, and if you still don't like looking at it, you shouldn't get it. And that's something that you said to me.
Yeah.
And I took it to heart, and I carried that temporary tattoo around with me.
Well, see, and that goes back
for
with
like
my
a couple of
thing,
years.
that there's no image that I've seen so far that I would want to have on me permanently yet.
Well, when I was 21, I wanted that temporary tattoo on my
Apparently
leg.
pretty bad
Permanently.
for 3 years. Or
Per-
whatever.
Yeah.
Permanently, and you can tell when you look at it, you can tell that it was probably some kind of temporary tattoo or sticker out of one of those machines. What it looked like.
That's so funny. I didn't realize that. So mine, just to add to Amber's story, and how this became like an uneducated decision. I love Neverending Story. We've talked about this a million times. The Aran, which is the Ouroboros, the snake, chasing the snake.
Yes.
Necklace in that book, it's on the cover of the book in the movie, and it's a necklace and it grants wishes, right? So it's actually in the book, it's the symbol that allows him to rebuild the world after it's destroyed. So that's the part of the movie that didn't happen. Like,
Yeah,
the first movie they didn't do it. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like the best part of the book is when he's rebuilding and he's learning like why things are, and like why you can't make selfish decisions because it doesn't benefit and everything.
Right.
But it's his chance to like be new. And I love that whole meaning about that. And I love that movie. I love the book. I loved everything about it. So I was like, oh, I want that as a tattoo. And in my computer graphics class, I actually got that image and I drew it myself with the Photoshop tools. And I was really proud of myself for, recreating that image.
I did not realize that's where your artwork came from.
I drew this.
I thought you found it online somewhere and wow.
Worked that image.
Well, this is
I did all of the scales.
Huge finding things online.
I did all of the scales and everything on it, right?
Wow.
So when we went to the tattoo place, that guy was just so put out with us. And we should have just turned around and left because he just seemed like he did not want to give us tattoos. And at that moment, we should have left because now I know a true tattoo artist would be excited. Just like when you go to get your hair cut and they're excited to cut your hair, their fingers are tingling.
Yeah.
And I should have known that. Now I know. Okay. When I went to go get my tongue pierced, she was so excited to pierce my tongue. She loves her job.
It's like when I get a client for my travel business and they tell me they want to go somewhere. I'm like,
I can't wait to
you
plan
this. Yeah.
Yes. So
That's how my hairdresser
that was
is,
the
for
number
sure.
one thing that we learned, or that I learned.
Yeah.
Should have stopped right there. Red flags. But I'm one of those people, I see red flags and I'm like, pedal to the metal. Let's do it. Red flags, right? So we get the tattoos, and this guy refused to give me the scales. He said it was impossible to draw all those scales.
And it's not impossible.
It's
you
not,
could go
because
get
I've
it redone today, and it
I've
look,
had people quote me.
and it would look
less.
3D, and it would look like it
Yeah.
would be coming off of your chest.
Exactly. I've had people quote me less cost than I paid for the initial tattoo to make it look better.
Right.
And he wouldn't do the colors either. So the colors are wrong. And then he talked me out of
He
where I
probably
wanted-
didn't know how is the problem.
Probably.
Mhm.
Quite possibly. I mean, you just trace it. Literally, they put it on tracing paper and then you trace it.
Right.
So, yeah. Oh, and to top that off, I had 2 different images. I actually came in there with a different image, and he refused to do that one because he said it looked too childish. But he did Amber's.
Oh,
No,
wow,
yeah,
that's kinda funny.
she had it was like a
I
unicorn.
did. It was a
She
Pegasus.
had a unicorn Pegasus.
It was a Pegasus.
Like it was on a greeting card that she really liked.
Mhm.
And he refused to do her Pegasus.
Is actually, you remember your friend that did the handmade cards for me when I was a baby?
I don't remember.
Oh, wow. There was a rose, and then there was a Pegasus. And they were
Okay.
birthday cards when I was 1 year old.
Okay.
And it's like,
Yeah.
you're paying him. Do what
Yeah.
I want.
And I've always loved that Pegasus on that
Right.
card. I still have it, because I thought, man, I would love that. I wanted it on my back because it
Okay.
was taking off flight,
Yeah.
And he said it looked too childish because it was more cartoony looking than realistic.
Oh, like some of those flash arts that I've seen aren't
Right.
I know, right?
But, though, this was literally more than 20 years ago.
Right.
And tattoo styles have changed too.
That's true.
So, I mean, there's so many different things. Like, you've been seeing the flash art that we've been looking at for Friday the 13th.
Some of it's really fancy and some of it's very childish.
Basic.
Looking.
Yeah, and very childish.
And some people like that way.
Right. Different people like different styles.
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah, that was my lesson learned, is that I should have researched a lot more.
Right.
I was just
we should have gone around to different places and gotten different quotes.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was just dead set on getting it because at that point,
you talked yourself into it. At that point.
I had been carrying around this image for 3 years, and that's what I wanted to get a tattoo of. Right. And I had already decided the day I had that drawing, I was like, I'm going to get this as a tattoo. It was already set in my mind. So coming up 3 years, I was like, I need it, And so that was my other lesson learned is, I'm still learning that lesson to wait.
Right.
Yeah, because, better.
Good things are worth waiting for.
Yeah, better opportunities will present themselves. Like, now.
Can we? Okay, because we were talking about the stereotypes and we're talking about the cost.
So I was talking about.
So I would, just out of curiosity, what did that one cost?
$160.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and you want
and
to compare?
That's back in the
2000s,
right.
2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Okay, the one on my leg cost me $60.
Yeah.
And it's way better.
Yeah, and those are way more intricate.
Right.
Than the little cartoon sun moon thing.
He definitely
that I got.
ripped us off too, as far as cost goes. Everyone I've talked to said I paid too much
for what he did.
For my tattoo.
Yeah, because I paid $100 for mine.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
It's a sun moon making out with it's a sun and moon together, and they're kissing each other.
Okay, I think I've seen it, but I just don't remember.
Out.
Yeah, it's a sun
moon.
Well, that's
that used to be making out.
Oh yeah, right.
I didn't
Things have changed so much.
Learn the lesson like Kristen did for my second tattoo. I was very it was one of those extreme impulse. I had just I had a broken heart, and I went and I got a tattoo of a moon stabbing a heart.
Oh, okay.
That was my second impulse. I picked it off the wall tattoo.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, all of mine are impulsive.
Okay. So back to
one of the stereotypes.
Do what?
Is that one of the stereotypes?
Well, I guess that would go with getting would be the uneducated thing.
Well, maybe.
The stereotype 3 is, and we kind of touched on this already, people with tattoos will have difficulty finding employment.
Yeah. Which was true back,
I still feel that way about
that way.
Neck tattoos.
Yeah, when I look at people, I do wonder, wow, I wonder how hard it is for them to get a job.
Especially facial, neck tattoos, anything that's like a full sleeve. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, full sleeve to me is not as bad as neck tattoos.
Well, a full sleeve can be covered up with a long sleeve shirt if your employer demands it.
If you have tattoos on your face, it's hard to cover that up.
How do you cover that up? You don't. Yeah.
It is really hard to cover up, and then I can see that. I remember working at Dillard's back in the day, and it was this whole strict no tattoo policy. But then I think they kind of were starting to get desperate for employees, because I remember them hiring a guy, which he had a high collar, so it almost covered it up. But he had a 4-leaf clover on his neck. On the side, under his ear. So it was just high enough that you could see part of the 4-leaf clover. And I remember them thinking oh, wow, I can't believe they hired him, because when my crop of people came through, they were just no visible tattoos, blah, 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 ever. So it might have been a change in hiring managers or
maybe
whatever.
They told him it couldn't be visible, and it just happened that he didn't cover it up very well.
Yeah.
Could be. I don't know.
But I remember thinking, I guess, a certain way about him because he had a tattoo on his neck. But I've always been kind of against tattoos on the neck and face.
You think about tattoos on the neck and the face, and you think about gangs and
Yeah,
people
that's
in
good.
prison.
And
I mean,
I
that's
have a friend who has a tattoo on her neck. Her whole neck is tattooed, and I think it looks really beautiful because it makes her neck so like elegant looking.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, some people do have really cool neck tattoos.
I have nothing against tattoos, and I don't have anything against. But like I said, I come from that that standard where they weren't allowed, and so that's what we were taught to think about, you know. And I know that's not true because I know people who have beautiful tattoos. There was a wonderful, I think I shared with you guys a video of the girl that sings, the Ukrainian girl that sings, and she has a full, I think her neck is all tattooed now. She wasn't in the first video, but I was watching an interview with her, and she has a full neck tattoo, and it's really pretty. It's like really intricate designs and everything, but it's like, you know, when I first started seeing those, my first shock was like, where do they work? You know, do they work at the tattoo parlor? Do they work, you know?
Yeah. Because all your previous former employers scared you into thinking that you're not valuable because you have tattoos.
Right. And so
that's definitely how it works in education.
Right. I mean, I can't imagine. I think there were a couple of, not a coach, but like one of the ag instructors, you know, like he taught agriculture and stuff like that, ag and mechanics, when I was in high school, and he had some tattoos, but he had to keep them covered up all the time. I mean, he drove a bus too, so sometimes we saw them, but you know, but yeah, I mean, he was the only person I ever saw working at a school. No, I mean, even the janitors didn't have showing tattoos. So it's, you know, yeah. So what is the next one?
The next one is getting a tattoo is a mistake. I think, and it kind of stems off of those that like get drunk and go get tattoos.
Right.
That people will surely regret getting a tattoo later in life.
Right. Well, and that comes back, you know, that one was drilled into me too. My dad was always like, don't get a tattoo because when you get old, it'll be, you know, they would talk about guys getting a tattoo and then their muscles went away. And so then they had this saggy, instead of this sexy pinup girl on their arm, they had this saggy old looking thing, you know, look on there. And it, you know, your skin droops and it looks like it's out, you know, or if you get something on your bum or your chest, you know, then you start gaining weight or whatever, and it gets all stretched out.
So, funny thing about my tattoo is, although it wasn't in the place where I originally wanted, it's not in the color, it doesn't look the way I want it. And now that I'm older, my chest, you know, my chesticles are not in the perky position they were.
Right.
It's not a perfect circle anymore. It's more like an oval. I don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
It's still my favorite tattoo.
Right. Well, and I think that is like you said, it's a common misconception.
That you'll regret it later.
And I think if it's done right, you know, if the tattoo artist understands what the body, you know, because a good tattoo artist knows what the skin is going to do over time, and they can talk you out of putting it
in a bad place,
where it's going to get stretched out or whatever, you know. And so I think that's part of it, is having a really good tattoo artist that you trust to tell you what to, you know, where to get it. You don't want it there because, you know, when you're old, when you're 40 years old, your boobs are not going to be up here. They're going to be way down there. And it's not going to look the same.
That's interesting. You're making me think about like doing things that you regret. And the things that I regret most in life are things that are not tangible. Like things I've said that you can't see or touch or feel. Right?
Because you can, and technically you can undo. You know, this is a misconception about tattoos. Yeah, you can undo a tattoo.
Nowadays, like Pete Davidson, you know who that is? Off SNL.
Okay.
His whole body was covered in tattoos, and he associated them when he wasn't sober, when he drank and did drugs, and he got most of them then. So he has started like the process over the last 2 years of removing all of his tattoos that he got when he was drunk or drugged.
So Aaron Neville, I believe is who it is. I was listening to an interview with him when many years ago. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a
musician,
singer, yes. And a fabulous voice. And he got he got out, when he was younger and went out or something, and he got a tattoo. And when his dad saw his tattoo the next morning, he made him remove it with a Brillo pad that morning. And he scrubbed it until it was gone. So it hadn't even had time to set,
Yeah.
Now, I will say that was a very rough way to get that done.
That would definitely be called child abuse nowadays.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it removed it, and nowadays they have like the laser tattoo removal. You can make anything go away. You can fix it and make it look like something else. So there's no reason to say you can't undo that mistake if you do feel like it was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But the first way to not make a mistake is to think very clearly about it.
Mm-hmm.
Take your time, pick what you want, have a good tattoo artist.
Don't be impulsive like Amber.
Don't be impulsive. Don't go get it when you're drunk, because a lot of people do that.
And that's actually, I think,
that's
against
unsafe.
the law in Texas. They're
Yeah,
not allowed
it's unsafe.
to give you
It thins your
tattoo.
blood, and you bleed a lot.
And you're not legally able to sign the document.
Right. You can't sign
that
consent.
Yes, because you are
inebriated.
Yep.
Okay.
It's against the law.
Is there another one? Is there one more?
Yeah, there's one more, and it's misconception: tattoos are unsafe and unsanitary.
Okay. That comes from, and I know the history of that. There are some, people got hepatitis from them
because they didn't sanitize their
because they weren't
equipment.
sanitizing. And a lot of times that's in uncontrolled, somebody just has a tattoo gun or whatever, and they're just doing them on the side. They're not working in a licensed
that can
shop.
happen also in a nail salon too.
Yeah, absolutely,
so it's just like,
absolutely.
and people still go get their nails done.
So that's the part of that now there are some concerns about chemicals in the ink that are potentially carcinogenic. I did hear a whole article about that on NPR maybe a year or two ago, because the inks are not controlled by the FDA, and so there can be pollutants. And they did this whole study where they found they were testing the inks that were being used in a number of shops. It wasn't just from one shop, it was multiple shops, and they tested the chemical content of the inks, and there were carcinogenic materials contaminating the inks.
Mm-hmm.
That is a problem with the manufacture of the inks, and you can't blame the tattoo parlors for it. It's whoever's making the ink, and that there is no government control over that.
Yeah, I do think though that tattoo parlors are now being more conservative with who they choose for their suppliers now.
Yes.
Because there are options for inks.
Right.
I'm positive that you could call around now and ask what kind of ink that they use and get more information about
Right.
They
what they're
display
made out
it
of.
too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I would like I said, I heard this on NPR it was a radio program, and they were talking about inks being found to be. Now, I have not followed up on the research on that.
Yeah.
To tell you which inks it was or where they studied or what or any of that. So, and I wouldn't even know where to find that article now because it was a while back. But they did do a scientific. This was I'm not even sure. It was a medical study, so it was an
Probably
official
through a university. Or something.
it was university funded, and they did this extensive research, and they found this to be a common problem. So it wasn't just one brand or whatever. It was a common problem. So I don't know
That's interesting that they're not FDA approved, because with like the hair cosmetology and stuff, like you can't operate like a hair cutting salon or a nail salon,
right,
without being licensed and using the proper methods.
Right.
And
they
know,
control
like,
and they control the chemicals that you can use. But here's the flip side of that. You know, our vitamins, our vitamins and minerals that we take, we ingest them, and they are not controlled by the FDA. They may or may not contain vitamin D or vitamin C. There may be none of that in there, and the FDA does not do anything about it. Like, they can say it has this, but it doesn't.
I always wondered why.
I'm not sure. Maybe somebody gave a kickback.
I was about to say that there's not enough money in it to go after it, so it must be good money to not go after it.
Right. Yeah, or something. I don't know. So that's, you know.
That's definitely worth something to ask. Like, I think maybe next time I get a tattoo, I might consider asking about that, because I can say, like, I've seen some ink work on some people that I know there's things that make your tattoo fade over time, like not keeping it, you know, your skin moisturized, getting a sunburn on that area, or, you know, sometimes it gets scabby afterwards, and if you don't treat the healing properly, you can lose some of the ink as well. But yeah, some people's tattoos fade, and like the one on my chest, it's lost a lot of its vibrancy because it has been subject to multiple sunburns.
Right.
And I've got freckles now.
Right.
On the tattoo. So it lost a lot of its color pretty quickly, actually. And so part of me wonders, like, you know, was the ink very good quality ink either?
Right.
You know, that's one of the things why I asked, you know, about getting it redone, because I'd like to get the scales added to it and then just get the vibrancy back in it.
Right.
Because it does look really faded now.
And I was just reminded by my own failing memory by myself. I actually do have tattoos. As we have discussed on here a few times, I am a breast cancer survivor, and in 2016, I had breast cancer, and I had to have tattoo markings put on me for the radiation machinery to line up with, and the way they do that is they just use a needle and they put a little dot of tattoo ink so that it's there and it doesn't wash away or whatever. And mine, that's been, you know, it's not as long as your tattoo, but it has not faded one bit, and I don't do anything to take care of that. I don't try. I mean, I would be perfectly happy for that dot to go. There's 4 dots, one on each side and one up and one down, and then I would be happy for those to go away, but they don't. They just look like a little almost blue-black mole freckle.
Like you touched yourself with the pen?
With the pen, yeah. And they have not faded at all. And I wonder, too, when I was talking, you know, about when I heard that article about the tattoo ink having contaminants in it, I was like, wow, here I am.
Just prolonging your... you know, breast cancer.
I'm a cancer survivor. Have I just introduced something else that could give me another form of cancer? So I don't know. There's no way to ever know. But
okay, so I was looking that up because you had me curious. And I'm looking at a 2023 study.
Okay, that would be about right, I think.
Mm-hmm. And the results, and it was studying like the results of 160 cases where people have gotten cancer or some kind of like cancer cells from.
Okay, this wasn't studying cancer people. They were studying the inks themselves.
Well, they're talking about 160 cases of cutaneous tumors.
That's a tumor on your skin.
Yeah, arising within tattoos. And the study shows that those with tattoos with red pigment
Uh-huh.
are more likely if you're going to get a tumor.
Right. Okay.
It would be red pigment.
So this is a follow-up study probably to the other one. The one that I was talking about, the study was actually sampling the inks themselves for contaminants.
And they were testing what
the product was.
Interesting.
So there's probably multiple studies out there. So
I'm sure.
so it goes to that, is it safe? Is it not safe? It goes back to the thing, is it safe to put deodorant under your armpits? There's studies that show that it's not, and then there's studies that show that it's inconclusive. So, so
I've seen that as well.
it depends on, how safe do you want to be? If you want to make sure that you're not going to get it, the best way is to not get it. That's the way it works.
It's kind of funny because like a lot of studies show a lot of things in the world give people cancer.
Right.
Like if you use artificial sweetener, supposedly.
Right.
Sun.
Well, and it comes back to everything,
earbuds.
Maybe you go with that thing,
earbuds.
everything in moderation, or whatever. It depends on your level, how comfortable you are with what level of risk. If you're, throwing caution to the wind, go get your tattoos. If you are super terrified of getting some kind of skin cancer, maybe rethink that tattoo.
Yeah.
Get a henna tattoo instead.
Get a henna tattoo instead. I don't know anything bad about henna. That I know of. So, yeah. Get a temporary tattoo and, lick and stick, whatever.
Slip and slide.
Slip and slide.
See,
Water
I
slide.
should have just done that to begin with.
Yeah.
Just stuck my temporary tattoo on my body and
so
went
I want to
ahead.
go back to there's one more stereotype that I have to address that, it kind of fell under that first one, but maybe not. It's more like your tattoos advertise for what you are. and that would be like the tramp stamp. That
I was wondering when we were going to bring that up.
I had to bring that up because, it's a stereotype that if you have a tattoo, above, right above your bottom, and
on your lower back,
and you can see it, or whatever, then that's a sign of someone who is
right. So that
little
tattoo
loose.
became really popular at the same time that low-rise jeans and midriff shirts were popular.
Right.
So
the 90s.
People wanted to
belly button rings.
belly button rings. People wanted to decorate their body in
That
places
area.
where you get seen. And I will say I've seen some of those tattoos that were like gorgeous. Now, would I ever get one? Probably not. But
that may be the only place on my body that's not like super fat.
See, I always
So I
told
could get one
myself that if I ever got down to my goal weight, I would get a tramp stamp.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still haven't gotten one.
That's funny because my goal was to get a belly button ring. Same area. It's
Yeah, same thing,
Yeah.
same situation.
But that's also because I dare not show that area.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think that stereotype is also because of other women's disapproval of
showing that
area because
Right. It could be.
you dare
and
not show that area for, whether you have, scruples or maybe you're
Right.
jealous because you can't.
Right.
And then the men who call it that are just being derogatory, honestly.
Right.
Because,
that happens. Yeah. Because if a woman wears a crop
They
top,
like
then
it.
she must be
yeah.
loose. Only women, and that there's
That's
there's
going back
certain-
to showing the skin.
there's certain body languages, that people read differently. I actually read this book about body language about like 30 or 40 years ago, but it was talking about how in Hispanic cultures, well, I say Hispanic, Latinx cultures,
Mhm.
women walk and they sway their hips, right?
Yeah.
So you walk, well, in our culture, very often, if a woman walks that way, that is suggestive. That means she's trying to pick somebody up or whatever. And that is misconstrued a lot. Same thing also like with Latin culture. They're taught to respect authority by looking down. And in American culture, if a child looks down and won't look you in the eye, it's considered disrespectful. But for them, it's the opposite of that. So same thing, we get those crossed stereotypes based on our own culture. So our culture is perhaps more prudish, and showing more skin means you're less of a prude or whatever.
Well,
or
America
or maybe
was
you're
founded
loose.
by pilgrims.
Well, this is true.
Yep.
And so we look at those things, you're showing a little more skin. That's a little more racy. Maybe you're not such a goody girl. And we have that sexism there.
Yeah.
That
it is. It's sexism.
It's sexism because women cannot dress that. A man can wear a tank top, a muscle tee or whatever. No big deal. Or go shirtless. But a woman, if she's not covered up, that's not good. So that you have to, I guess, over the years we've learned that doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, that's really what I try to do when I look at other people's tattoos, is not try to make something out of their tattoos, because that's their story.
It is.
And my tattoo, like, if you don't know, like,
the meaning of the
what
orange.
it means, right? Like, I literally had someone that told me that was satanic. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
No, it's not.
I promise you it's not.
Yeah.
Like, maybe some people think that the snake is, but in my story, in my never-ending story, my tattoo isn't.
Right.
Right? And so you kind of have to look at other people's tattoos and not try to judge.
Right.
Who they
Ask
are
them what
and
their story is.
Yeah.
Tell me about your tattoos.
Because I guarantee you, anyone who has a tattoo has at least one story about their tattoo that they'd
why
like
they
to share.
chose that tattoo.
Because I love telling my story about my stupid tattoo and how I should have got a different tattoo or gone somewhere else. Like, that's a lesson I learned as a human being. Like,
that was your coming of age lesson
exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
And I wear it proudly. Like, yeah, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
But I love myself for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should go into everything with that open mind. Don't judge a book by its cover. That's an old adage that still means the same thing. Like I said, I have a lot of friends who are 60s, 70s who have tattoos, and you would never guess that they had tattoos unless they showed them to you. And they are not that stereotypical kind of person that you think they are. They're, some of the sweetest, most loving people in the world.
Educated, too.
Educated people. And, grandmas and sweet little grandmas and things like that. So I think it's more becoming of us to notice someone's tattoos and ask them why they got a tattoo. Ask them their story about their tattoo and judge them for who they are and what their stories are than what you see on the surface. Because none of us are what you see on the surface. We're all what's comprised of our many, many stories. And I think we shouldn't judge each other on that. And then
we
also
shouldn't judge each other at all.
Well, we shouldn't judge each other. Yeah, that's true. And then again, these things sometimes are life lessons and big lessons, and maybe a small lesson or two, but learn from them. Yeah.
And just enjoy your life, because it's only YOLO, right?
Right.
Exactly. No regrets.
No regrets. All right.
And this highly educated person is still going to be getting tattoos. And a lot of them are going to be impulsive.
Yeah.
Because I always talk myself out of the ones that I plan. I think out of the 8 tattoos on my body, only 2 of them I actually planned.
Okay.
And I waited like 20 years to get a second tattoo.
You did.
I waited
You
really
waited a long time.
time. Yeah.
Well, I've waited 60, so.
Well, I mean, I went like gaps.
Ashley
where I
waited like 6 months.
she
did.
Yeah.
She went and got her first tattoo, and then she turned right around and got another one.
Well, it's just like her piercing.
that.
When she got her nose pierced, and then she went and got her septum pierced. Yeah. So, okay.
All right. So, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, we're doing dad jokes. Are they funny or no? So come back and prepared to either laugh or try not to laugh. I dare you.
Okay. So we want to hear from our listeners. So hit us up on...
Show us your tattoos.
Yes. Send us your tattoos. We're going to start a Facebook thread in our Facebook chat. Show us your tattoos.
Yeah. Post them there.
Okay. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.